So I want to talk about two elements of our real world that you can add into your fictional writing that will make it more realistic. And these two elements, when I say them, they're very obvious to us in real life, um, but they're very easy to overlook when you're writing fiction. When you're writing fiction, it can be very easy to start a plot and just linearly write through to the end, and you have a sequence of events. Uh, Book page numbers are numbered, right? Book pages are numbered. There's a sequence to those events. And as writers, oftentimes it's an easy trap to fall into to think in a sequential, linear way. So the two elements, quick elements today that I want to talk about to make our writing more realistic. The first one is not every character is not every character gains access to information at the same time the reader does, or at the same time it's given to us or to each other. So I think easy examples would be something like foreshadowing or foreknowledge for characters, a narrator that tells a reader something that is hidden from characters in your story is a fun thing. That is enjoyable. That's a way to sort of add some richness. But there's more than that. Once you put your characters into this world, think about um, if you're writing a detective story and you've got your detective is working for the Los Angeles Police Department in 1949, and maybe the chief knows something that that detective doesn't, or the criminal knows something that that detective doesn't, or maybe that detective knows something that the other two don't. They also, this is very fun as well, can have knowledge that the reader doesn't. So this is how Sherlock Holmes is a great example of this. Sherlock Holmes always has knowledge that's revealed to the reader afterwards, and it was fun because then you can kind of think back on those elements where there was hidden knowledge. Detective writers are fantastic at um, obscuring facts from characters and from readers. It's a genre that plays really well into that. So consider about make cognizant in your head that not all of the characters know everything at the same time, and plan that out. When did this person learn this? Will they ever learn it? Maybe they don't. Um, will there be a character with some foreknowledge of events? Will there be some character that has oracle like foresight? Or will there be a narrator that knows sort of more than what any of the characters can, and that can inform the readers? And the readers will know more than some of the characters do. So thinking carefully about what characters and the reader know at what time throughout your story is a way to add some complexity and richness and realism, because as we walk around in our daily lives, it's very obvious to say it, but not everyone knows the facts of a detective case at the same time. The second one that's a sort of nonlinearity that exists in the real world that I want to say out loud, to verbalize so that it becomes part of our thought process when we're writing, is it's very easy to have a plot where there is something to overcome. Let's say we have our detective story and they need to find out who broke into a bank. Well, you might have the detective go and talk to the bank manager, and then go and talk to a witness, and then go and talk to whatever. And that's a very linear string of events. And that makes sense when we're writing a linear story from start to finish. But in reality, we might have some non-parallels, and there might be advances in storylines that happen unexpectedly or alongside our main characters, or someplace hidden from view that gets reintroduced. For example, our detective, we might be following along, and they might be going to interview some witness about this bank robbery, and they might get an update when they get back to the station that someone came in and confessed some knowledge, or gave a tip to the police department. You might have characters that try multiple ways to go about something, and we might be following along the protagonist. That doesn't need to be the avenue that gets us to the end of the story. That might be a dead end. that detective interviewing that witness might not bear fruit, and we might rely on the story having some lucky event happen elsewhere that brings that knowledge into our plot, like some third party witness that uh, brings information into the station and it doesn't go directly to our detective. Uh, that is harder to write because we want to think of our protagonist as being the the character that does the action that resolves the pressing problems. So the problem of we don't know who did this. You want the main character, you want your writing to sort of resolve that, and it's much more nuanced and complicated to have your team split up into 8 or 9 different uh, avenues, and you're following this character, and this character over here solves the problem past our view. We can't see what they're doing. They just come back to us and they have a solution to it. Um, so I want you to think about those types of nonlinearities, those richnesses of character interactions and time frames, and that our protagonist can be made a little bit more real if the story that they're driving forward is not quite nearly as linear, if there are parallel stories that are sort of intertwining. Parallel stories that intertwine in real life. You meet people and they become part of your story and they have their parallel story. They don't need to all tie up nicely in the end. You might meet someone uh, and maybe it's a casual acquaintance who you see on a regular basis. It's your barber, and you have fantastic, friendly conversations with them. You know them by name. You'd stop and ask them about their kids if you saw them in the grocery store, but they're not so close that you would go and say goodbye to them before you leave town, or if you move to another city. And or maybe you try and they're not at work that day. And to them, you know, your stories were parallel lines that sort of intersected every now and then it just ended with no resolution, and that character is never seen again in that plot. Um, Not everything needs to wrap up nicely in fiction because it doesn't in the real world. All these little parallel lines and all of these stories on their own of the characters on the sides that are merging for a short while and then branching back off, they don't all need to merge back together at the end. So you can add some realism and richness to your writing with that. Uh, Thank you. If you come up with good examples of this in fiction, or you have questions or comments on it, please add them below, because the more we drive this conversation forward, the better all of our writing will be and the more enjoyable our fictional stories will be. Thank you much.